Here because of you, so thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maria Carolina. I am the president of the chapter, and tonight we have for you a great panel about industrial engineering and industrial engineers around different industries, and how with only a single set of skills you can be a successful professional across a broad range of industries. So, without further ado, I leave you here with my friend Luis, who's gonna introduce you to the panelists that we have today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So good evening, guys. My name is Luis. I'll be facilitating the panel today. So without further ado, I'm gonna allow themselves to introduce themselves with a little question. First, a little bit about yourselves, your name, and a little bit of what industry you're on, and what was your journey to get into that industry. So if you can please start this.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for coming. Good night. My name is Alitza Vega. I am an industrial engineer working at Royal Caribbean as an assistant program manager in the New Build and Innovation Department. So the name says it all. One of the skills, that are very important there is innovation, but I want to let you know a little bit about me and my journey to get here. I worked first at a pharmaceutical company, and I was the connection between the person who was preparing the formulas and the development of the new product, so new product development. And then I moved to American Express, where I had the pleasure of working with Eddie for 14 years in the industrial engineering department, but more important, later on I moved into operational risk, which is very exciting. And some of you will wonder why operational risk for industrial engineers. I'll tell you more about it later. And following on that path, I also work at an insurance company with 6 countries in Latin America, and for the last 4 years, I've been working in Royal Caribbean, as I say, as an assistant program manager. I was blessed to work in a project that was delivered in April 2019. The ship is Spectrum of the Seas. It's sailing in China right now. So good market, but right now not so good. And I'm working on a sister ship that will be delivered in October this year in Germany, and that one will sail in the Caribbean in the wintertime and in the Mediterranean in the summertime. Thank you.
I'm Eddie Alvarez. I'm an industrial engineer. Got my bachelor's and master's from the University of Miami. Long time ago. And I've spent 27 years in the financial services industry in many different roles, which I'll touch on a little bit later during the discussion. And the way I got into, to be an IE in the financial services industry was the same way a lot happened in my career, basically by chance and just following the currents wherever they would take me. Right. So when I graduated high school, went to college, want to study engineering, and I had to pay my way through school, so I went to work at UPS because that's what everybody on my block did. Everybody would load and unload trucks, and it was a good paying gig, at the time. And but when I went to apply to be, to load and unload, they saw that I'm studying engineering, so they stuck me in the IE department to be a clerk, right? So that was my first exposure to industrial engineering. I was still studying civil engineering at the time, and in my junior year, I finally I switched over from civil engineering to industrial engineering because I guess I couldn't take the stress. Civil engineering. So then I was fortunate enough to get an assistantship here at the University of Miami, and I was helping the teacher I was assigned to on a consulting gig, doing computer simulation work for an electronics manufacturer, all right, and that parlayed into becoming my first job. After I graduated, so I worked in electronics manufacturing for about 5 years. The company I was fortunate enough to work with, actually share an office with another IE from Penn State, who also had expertise in discrete event simulation, right? But he was much better than me because he actually worked for a company called Systems Modeling, who developed all the software that all of us used to do, computer simulations. So we developed a great friendship. In fact, I had lunch with him today, still long time afterward. And but he then saw the writing on the wall. Electronics in the late 1980s, early 90s, when everything's moving to the Orient, was not gonna last long. So he actually took the job in American Express, and about a year later, called me over. And again, 27 years later, here I am. Right, still in the industry, most of it with American Express. So that is something I'll touch on. I look at how just one thing led to another, kind of by chance, which I'm not necessarily sure it's the best way to do it, but it kind of worked out for me. Right? Didn't fight where where people were inviting me to come. Frankly,
So I'm Evelyn Hernandez, and I am the Assistant Vice President of Finance and Resource Management in Mount Sinai Medical Center. And obviously I'm here representing the healthcare industry. I've been in healthcare for about 10 years. And I went to UCF for undergrad, thank you, babe. Undergrad and grad as engineering management. And after I got out of my master's, I actually started in Boston Scientific in manufacturing as a production supervisor. So I was in manufacturing for some time, manufacturing a lot of medical devices. And after a short stay there, I moved to Beckman Coulter, which is similar, again, manufacturing, production supervisor, looking at processes. And in another short time there, I actually got a call from an old college professor that had taught a lot of quality courses, asking if I was interested in looking at hospital or healthcare operations. And so that was about maybe 10 years ago. And so I started there, I moved in, and I worked in Holy Cross as a black belt looking at process improvement. And then some years ago, I moved to Mount Sinai, where it's a very similar job where we look at process improvement, but also under the arm of finance, which is a very nice, I guess, relationship between having both of us. So I have an amazing team. A lot of them are here, and we work on anything that has to do with expense management. So how do you manage expenses in the hospital? How do you look at all of these government programs that are threatening hospital revenue? How do you manage and improve processes, for the best of a patient that will be financially viable? And that's
I'm Karen Schwald, Dr. Karen Schwald, just to a couple of my students that are former students that are here. I am currently a professor in the Engineering Management Master's Program at FIU. But I feel like I'm here representing Aerospace because my title at FIU is Professor of Practice, and that meant I came in with quite a considerable amount of industry experience. So I stayed on after my bachelor's to get my master's in industrial engineering. Started off in a Rockwell facility that made valves for the flow control industry, oil and gas industry. And from there, I after a few years, went into aerospace, primarily GE aircraft engines. And it was nice. I was there for 12 years there. And definitely take advantage of your benefits of education benefits when you work for one of these large corporations, because they paid for my PhD. Okay, and then the aerospace in the 90s was going down. I actually volunteered for the layoffs and got my first professor job at Miami of Ohio. Okay, I always have to clarify that here. And taught there for a while. While I was at GE, I was primarily or hired there in their advanced manufacturing type facilities. So implementing advanced manufacturing type of modular manufacturing, cellular manufacturing, big modules, big systems implementations, and working on government. We were spending government money to input these things. But then my second job there, or my primary job there when I left, was actually entitled Senior Proposal Engineer. I was one of the few people that now teach engineering economy that was actually a practicing engineering economist. And there are, those jobs are pretty rare, but they are out there. You can't always get those. But that's also what got me into my next area of expertise, which I mainly teach in now. And I ended up spending 10 years as a consultant in the area of quality management, quality engineering. I taught black belt statistics for the American Society for Quality. I was a consultant to several companies. And at the same time, I was a aerospace auditor, quality management systems auditor, AS9100, the aerospace version of the ISO 9001. So I got into a lot of factories, and I love visiting different factories, so that was nice. But then I got tired of all the travel and decided I really did enjoy teaching. The position opened up 6 years ago at FIU, teaching the courses I love to teach, engineering economy, and my quality courses. Those are the ones I really love to teach. So so happy to be here.
Nice, thank you. So the way the panel is going to work is we have a few questions here already prepared, and we're going to give it to them, and some of them are assigned for some of the questions. Feel free to pitch in. If at any point, in any question you're not assigned to that, but you want to pitch in, just let me know. And at the end, we're going to open for you guys to do any questions to any of them or all of them, whatever you want. Because at the end of the day, it's about you guys. Okay? So we're going to start with Litza. What is the best part of being an IE in your industry? What is the most challenging part?
The best part of being an IE in my industry, and especially in the group that I'm working, as I say, in building and innovation. This is the area where the chips are designed and built. Well, the physical construction happens in Europe, but the design and the technical part of it happens here in Miami. So my job is to coordinate between the teams here and the teams in the what we call the site office or the shipyard, to make sure that everything is going according to how marketing and the brand here has decided that the ship has to go. So it's very dynamic. The company before used to build one ship every 4 years. Now it's 2 ships every year, and soon it's going to be more than 2 ships every year. So it's very dynamic, and not only that, the competition is there. So how do we come up with innovative ideas? How do we make it easier for guests? I don't know if you have visited Terminal A. That's a terminal that was built by Royal Caribbean last year. And we're using face recognition, for example. So it's frictionless, the signing and the boarding in the ship. You just walk through, you don't have to wait in long lines like it used to be. So it's the dynamic environment, the coming up with ideas, and at the same time, resolving problems, because not everything works smooth. The other thing is the relationships that you build between your teams and the teams in the shipyard also. So while these are some of the good things, at the same time they become challenges. As I say, we work on different schedules, different time zones, different goals. Not goals, but different understanding. Like from here we have the people who design for the guest and the shipyard is more concentrated on making sure that things are happening with all the rules and regulations, which we also are concerned about that, but that there is a clash sometimes between that. So how do we resolve those problems and those clashes? And also the ability to work on the technical side of it as well as on management. As an IE, I think the flexibility that the education as an IE and the expertise or the experience gives you, it's very important. So I think those are the what I like about my industry, and also some of the challenges that we find.
Thank you. Now, Eddie,
Yes.
what's your favorite IE tool?
Well, we all learn a lot of tools, right? A lot of techniques, different math techniques, all sorts. But I gotta say, the one tool, the one thing I've made most money using is the Pareto analysis. Does anybody know what the Pareto analysis is? The 80-20 rule, right? My God, I've abused. I've abused the use of the 80-20 Pareto analysis. In manufacturing, the more obvious one, the one you learn, in your production management course, is for inventory. So clearly, you had your ABC inventory, and we did a lot. But that that hands-on experience in inventory, then I said, hey, when I went to American Express, wow, I can use it, like immediately. Like I think the first week I was there, I was looking at credit operations. So when people were, let's say, maybe going 30 days past due on their card, you don't have this whole operation where everybody's calling everybody who's 30 days past due and saying, hey, what's going on? So I go, do we really need to? Is everyone the same? So I started applying Pareto to looking at the risk profiles of individuals, and no, there's this, there's 20% of people that you definitely have to call, but there's 80%, why don't you just send them a letter, and then, so which was a little bit, that the risk guy goes, what are you talking about? You gotta work these guys down, but, so that was like the first non-standard use of it, but, from there, other applications, figuring out who are the top 5% of our customers who account for 50% of our spend, right? And then with that, saying, okay, what is the most amazing experience that we can give those people, because they're driving all the profitability of our company. In product management, and I'll get into a little bit of what that is, but when thinking through what are the features that we really need to add, what are the capabilities that we need to build, the same thing, what are capabilities that are going to drive most of the revenue, the profits, and so being able to have that macro view and really be able to distinguish what matters from what doesn't matter and focus in on what matters is an incredibly important and useful tool, because you can go crazy trying to do everything, right? So I would say, Pareto analysis, that's like the most powerful tool ever. And I'm really glad I went to school the day they taught it.
How about you, Ezra?
So, I switched between two of them. And I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna say that one of them is the process maps, and one of them is the YY analysis. And so in healthcare, you get in there, and one of the difficulties that you have is that you have these very, very intelligent people, the nurses, the doctors, all of these people went to school. None of them are, not educated. They have their own thoughts. They have instances where they had a bad outcome, this happened, that happened. They always remember the tragedy. And so when you sit with them and you want to implement, let's say, a standard process, something that is, across the board, they'll say, this isn't widgets, this is not manufacturing, you can't apply the same to everyone. And so, process maps, one, helps out to see what the process is. I'm not clinical, I'm not pretending to be clinical, so help me understand, what works well and what doesn't work well, because that's the first point of any improvement that you're trying to do. But the YY analysis has been very powerful, because there's so many there's never a single silver bullet, as they call it in healthcare. And so what's nice about that is that you can really create some synergies with the team that you're working on, and saying, okay, so tell me what's going on. Why do we have, let's say, low productivity, whatever? Why do we have these fallouts? And what's nice about it is that you can take those 1 and 2 instances that happens and put it in a YY diagram and validate that what they're saying is important and that you understand that you're listening to them. But then at the end of the YY diagram, you can say, okay, now let's pick the ones that we can work on, you know? So I heard you, I put it down, it's here, it's important, it happens, but we can't address it. So let's move on to the ones that you can. So that for me is a nice tool because it really brings together the ability to really see if you understand what the client is feeling, and at the same time, separate those things that are avoidable and, you know, non-avoidable, and focus on those.
Great. Karen?
I have to, probably one of the most powerful tools that isn't used enough are your flow charts and your process maps. Because one of the things I really emphasize and use a lot is you have to understand your processes to improve them. You have to understand your processes, and creating those be it flow charts or value stream maps or process maps really does, and when you're just in creating them and talking to the people to get them right or near right, you're learning, they're learning, you're communicating. They're a really good tool. I want to follow up a little bit on the Pareto charts too. I spent today grading 40, because in my online class I have 40 students, Pareto exercise where one of the things a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people just don't realize the power of them, and they often stop too soon. They, because you can drill down with them, so your top 5, how else can you, where are your top, where are the top so many actually located, where by collecting these other types of data, you can actually drill down, first sort your data by defect type and sort it by, how many defects on each shift and cost, always turn things into cost if you can, not just numbers, So it is super powerful, and that's what the exercise was today. They had defect numbers and they had cost per defect. They had to do both. And they had to explain how the charts met the Pareto principle, and about half. And I hate people talking about 80-20 because no, the Pareto principle is vital, few, trivial, many.
That's right, yeah.
It's not,
That's right.
And they're trying to force fit this data that is not 80-20 into explaining the Pareto principle with 80-20 rule. I'm kind of, no.
You're absolutely, and by the way, I found, 80-20 is, I've always found the top 10% of whatever I'm looking for account for 50% of the outcome. And the bottom 50% of, for instance, my telesales agent in one of my shops, the top 10% accounted for 50% of sales.
Yeah.
Then you had the 40% that accounted for 40%, then you had the 50% that accounted for 10% of sales, right? So you need to understand that and understand who are the 10%, who are the 50%, and make sure that
And there's natural breaks in
you're
your
rewarding those
data,
10%, right?
But they all wanted to say, oh, it doesn't follow the 80-20 rule because the 68% accounted for, I'm kind of like, no.
You don't have to be literal.
Anyway.
Great. So this question is pretty interesting. When we were checking on who was coming, and we saw that mostly we got young professionals and students, seniors, juniors, this question was the one that caught my attention, because when I was coming out of school, this was something that I would like to hear from experienced professionals. What skill set is key to your success that you did not learn in school? And this one, it's interesting because we were asking them who wants to answer each one, and this one, all of them say yes, I want to. So let's hear from each one of them. Elitza.
For our listeners, you always have this.
I'll switch it up.
I would say relationship building. That's a soft skill that, especially when I started engineering, you're an engineer and you're an engineer, okay? You're like a box. And then you go out and you have to sell yourself. Especially with IEs, we have many ideas. We have a lot of innovation, creativity that you have to sell and you have to get things done. So how do you get that? I mean, you work with so many different people. And like I was saying now, I work across different cultures. You know, here in the US, then you have the people in Europe, and how do you communicate, you know, across different geographies and across different cultures and still get things done and, you know, have the people willing to help. Even though you're part of a team, you all know, even in school, you have a team, you're working for a project, and then you have two people who do the job, and then, you know, the rest don't. How do you get those people, how do you motivate the people to help you, to make them understand that it's in their benefit also, not only yours? How do you build that? And you start by building the relationship before you even have to go and ask for anything. So I don't know if you read Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's the bank. So you deposit, you know, so you have to start depositing so that then you have, you know, your return. I was very happy today. I was asking a favor for a girl that she came. I took her to Wynwood one night. She was amazed with, you know, the area. So today I was telling, hey, my friend is going on the ship. Can you get her connected with the hotel director so she gets, you know, good attention and all that? And then she said, anything for you. So those are the things that you know, make your day. So definitely building relationships.
Great. Let's go.
Alyssa's right. I think that's the single biggest difference. When I first, I vividly remember back to that first manufacturing job, right, where I was assigned. I had to design a new factory because we're moving from our factory in Doral to one in Sunrise, and I had the skills. I knew all about, you know, I was going to design workstations. I had to design layouts. You know, yeah, I had my facilities, you know, layout optimization class and my ergonomics class. So I knew how I was going to, you know, design the workstations and all that. So I think I thought I was like just, you know, all that and a bag of chips, right? And I just went out there and I was like a bulldog. I went right to the floor and I started, you know, grabbing agents and, you know, or workers and asking them questions, and I was just moving in a vacuum, you know, figuring I had all the answers. I know I learned all these skills and I know how to do this thing, because I completely did not know anything or take into account anything about, wait a minute, you're working in a social environment with a lot of people who have a lot of views and know a lot more about what they're doing than what you do, right? And so that's really, and by the way, and I remember I got chewed out so many times because I didn't learn quickly, you know, that no, you can't just operate on your own and in a vacuum, and you know, you really have to respect the expertise of other people. You need to understand, you need to seek to really learn deeply, you know, from others. You need to understand who are the decision makers, who are the folks that you need to socialize ideas with, you know, and how do you do that? You know, you don't bring out the radical, you know, big ideas in a room with 20 people, you know, and no, you kind of, this is, you know, you go little by little, you start socializing one at a time, you know, and get to those decision makers, those leaders, so that ultimately when you are in a more, usually people tense up when they're, you know, in a room, that everybody wants to show that they're smarter than the next guy and the like, and that's not really the best environment to gain consensus. That's where you just validate and agree on who's doing what, right? So basically, what Alyssa's saying, socialization means, you know, understanding that you're not necessarily always the smartest person in the room, right? That you need to learn from others. You want others giving you the ideas, you know, and you being the facilitator as much as possible. You know, and you want to, you know, and you just want to, if you're a good collaborator, that in itself, you know, people get promoted solely because they're great collaborators and they know how to bring the smart people together to drive whatever outcomes that you want to drive. So I did not learn about how to function in a social work environment at school, and I've learned a little bit. I'm still not the best, but yeah.
You remind me of a phrase that I heard a while back, and if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
That's right. That's right.
So, Edlin, same question?
I mean, I think I'm gonna repeat myself, but, in the same sense, it's kind of the negotiation and the change management. You go to school, the data analysis is easy, you can do that in a second, you know what the data says, you know what to do, you get in there, you talk to someone and they completely just don't wanna listen, they say they'll do it, they don't do it, so, I think that it's something that's not taught and maybe it's not easy to teach, but really what are those key phrases of how can I negotiate with someone on getting started? Hey, this isn't gonna be perfect, guys, we're not gonna get to everything, but let's try it. And I had one of my bosses, my previous bosses, I would just sit and watch her in meetings, and she would drop in some of these key phrases that were allowed it to be a non-committal thing from the other, from the team. It was, well, why don't we pilot it? Listen, if it doesn't work, we can go back, and just getting some of that in there. And hey, you don't think that 5 minute works? What about 10 minutes? Something that's basically, ridiculous. Who would wanna wait 10 minutes and, so it's those little key, I guess, phrases, words, like you said, the relationships have to be there, because at the end of the day, if no one likes you, they're not gonna work with you, and whatever you say is not gonna be implemented, and you might as well not be there. But it's also, I think, a lot of that negotiation, right? How do you give and take and try, and again, I think it also comes with the listening. You have to be trusted by people to say, listen, this person understands what I'm saying, they're not gonna put me in a bad position, and ultimately, they're going for a good outcome that's not just for them, but it's, for the company itself.
I'm gonna go a little different direction on this. I agree with everything everybody said, but I wanna talk more focused to the students. You're all having to take a statistics class, right? I took my statistics class as an undergrad, did not learn a thing. Just promptly forgot it. And I wish I had learned it then. Now, part of that was because of the way it's taught. Now, a lot of schools, especially if they teach, I don't know where yours is taught, if the math department teaches it, it's very theoretical and not as applied. So so you can't relate to it, but really try to take the time to relate to it, because it does permeate every aspect, anything in quality, definitely. We had a discussion earlier on the finance piece of it earlier, and I've had students in my class, when I'm teaching some of the statistical methods, say, oh, that's why they have us do this in the standard procedure at work. Now I understand it, and I'm explaining it to other people. But to be able to, and other people can baffle you with statistics, and if you don't know what they're talking about, you don't know if they're right or wrong, or because they're not always right either. So really try to learn those statistics. Capability analyses is probably one of the most important important applications of statistics in the central theorem, all those good things. Really try to understand that. It's important later on.
There's one other, I think, a really important skill that doesn't come easy for engineers. Okay, we're all very detailed, and we're always taught to show all our work, to get full credit, right? And when you're dealing in a business environment, corporate environment, people don't want to always know all the details, right? And you don't want to force it down their throat. No, but let me tell you why. I don't care what. Just tell me the what. Right? So being able to tell your story, your points succinctly. Get to it. If someone wants to get the background, hey, sure, let me show you on appendix page 3 how, why. Let's go through the data, right? But when you're making a presentation or in a meeting, people don't want to think. They want to get the get what they trust you. Give me your answer, and being able to develop nice stories, Just,
Oh.
hey, here's why we gotta do this, this is what the opportunity is, or this is what the issue is. Boom, here are a couple of the options, I really think this is the right one, boom, and make it entertaining and light, and save the hard thinking, for somebody who really wants to know. And there are, individuals that, I would always wanna dive into details, but most of my audience didn't, right? So that's an important concept. That doesn't come easy, especially for engineers, where we want to show the data, that boom, and back everything up. I would save it, let people ask you and get to the point.
Thank you. So Etley, I know that right now healthcare is very big on continuous improvement and Six Sigma and the whole thing, but it's traditionally not a very usual industry for IEs. So tell us a story where being an IE, you were able to add value to the
what we're
industry.
doing. So, and I'll jump on, something that Dr. Small said, which is that knowing statistics was very important. And so, and I'll say it, and I'm sorry because I think you're a consultant, but we have a lot of consultants and they really don't know what they're talking about half the time. And so we had some consultants come in and say that with a 95% confidence interval, we needed X number of beds in our hospital. And so it was strange because the number that they were projecting was 20 more than what we have today. And so with every bed costing us more than $1 million, you can imagine how much that would be. And so I kept looking at the presentation and I was like, yeah, this looks like a normal curve. This looks like the formula. This looks exactly like a 95% confidence interval of the mean, but they're using it as a projection of how many beds we need. And so, I was able to stop for a second and say, no, I'm sorry. I teach statistics because I do it part-time. So this is not the correct application of this tool. And they were like, oh no, that's just a method that we use. And I was like, no. that's not how this is used, and so I think that, and not to say that wouldn't have been caught by someone upper in my team, because honestly, I deal with very, very smart people, and, we have a lot other IEs in the hospital as well. But, I think the ability to have some of this level of thinking to be able, and consultants have a rough time with us really, because we really do put them to the test to say, I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense, show me your work, and so we can go back and forth, and maybe someone else in another profession would be able to do that, maybe a statistician, I don't know, but the fact that what I think is helpful is really understanding, the data, understanding operations, and sitting back and saying, does this make sense if what you're saying makes sense? And so anyways, long story short, they completely changed the methodology, but as you can imagine, that's something that, for me, I felt, I'm glad that I'm here to be able to stop this from even reaching the top as a recommendation.
Perfect. Great. And Karen, I know you want to
Yeah,
pitch in a bit.
what was the question?
Tell us a story
Okay.
where being an IE brought value to your industry.
Okay. Actually, I wanted to relate a story from a student that I was is this this is in my industry or
Yeah.
in a, okay, value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which story is I going to tell that? Okay. I think as an IE in the quality world, in the continuous improvement world, that the ability to go in and look at processes, be it manufacturing, which is my background, or the health area. I actually worked on a health project with Ivy last year. Process is a process. You made the transition as well.
Mm-hmm.
Be it using those skills in continuous improvement and quality, and and actually 90% of continuous improvement is not the statistics. You just need the statistics to prove you actually did something right. In a lot of cases, and to know where to focus your efforts. But having that, being able to go into a facility and look at the processes, analyze what's value added, not value added, applying lean type type techniques, I think it is really what some of the best value that IEs can bring, and that and there's jobs out there, a lot of jobs out there in quality and continuous improvement. So
Thank you.
I
Eddie.
think I was supposed to have a story. Yeah, okay, but I preached instead. Sorry about that.
So Eddie, what are some roles in your industry that you feel are good career options for IEs that aren't specifically industrial engineering positions?
Yeah, this is I think what I was most excited to speak about today. So I look at my career at American Express, and I divide it in like 3 very different roles or jobs that I had. So the first one, it was in the Fort Lauderdale Service Center, and that was very much your traditional industrial engineer. It was the industrial engineering department, we called it performance engineering, but it was an IE work. And that was everything that you learn in school. It's process, it's process re-engineering or lean, it's, staffing, it's doing a lot of, quality analysis, improving, servicing platforms, that kind of thing. Basically in summary, trying to improve the economics and the service quality of American Express operations, right? I won't harp on that because you know that. So I was then asked to take a VP role in New York, as part of the risk and information management organization. Okay, and this is where I started really, discovering just complete, new careers that I didn't even know existed, right? And really high-paying jobs that I think IEs with a little bit of training would be optimal for. And there's 2 different roles I want to talk about. First of all, is in the space of analytics, okay, and a few roles which are fantastic, right? So in financial services, you have risk management. Now, risk management is all about modeling and doing analysis to answer very important questions like, when you're onboarding customers, who should get the credit card and who should not get the credit card, or who should get the loan and who should not get the loan, all right? What is a line? This is continuously, evaluating, okay, you have a line of $3,000, should we make it $5,000 or should I cut it? And that's ongoing evaluation, all right? When am I going to send somebody to collections or to credit ops because this guy, we think he's not going to be able to pay? These are all. This is all modeling. These are all stats, right? And similar to those, there's those same questions are being asked from both the credit risk, that is ability for you to pay, or from then the fraud risk. Is this fraudster or not? So also. Very different set of questions, but very similar set of tools to be able to assess risk or assess fraud at many different stages in the life cycle of a customer, right? Similarly, and something I was even closer to was the area of marketing analytics. Okay, so where you're trying to make decisions, American Express spends about $1 billion in marketing every year, right? So you're trying to make decisions on really important financial decisions on every single marketing campaign as who's going to actually respond to this, right? And try, so you need to model a response. You need to look at the value of different offers to determine should I market this particular product to, or direct market it to 1,000 people or 20 million people, right? So the whole area of targeting. Or conversely, when you come to me because you come to my website, or you call me because you have a servicing question and I want to take advantage that I have you on the phone to talk to you about a product, which is the right product for this particular person, right? So it's the same question in reverse, right? So the area of targeting, another area of marketing analytics, is we call it test and learn. It's really design of experiments, to really understand what resonates in market, which are the options, the variations of products, that'll resonate. So this is all the area of the same skill set, by the way, whether you're doing marketing analytics or risk management, it's all the same skill set. It's all a lot of regression, analysis, now, some AI or neural nets and machine learning, but they're kind of they're the same skill set, just applied to different questions. And these are entry level $100,000 a year jobs that are in the industry, right? So I managed teams of econometricians, and when I say econometricians, I use the term loosely. They're typically were engineers that had a few courses in and plus hands-on experience in modeling. All right, we did have some proper PhD econometricians as well, but so that was that area. Then eventually, fast forward to my third stage in my career. I was asked to help launch a new business at American Express. So this was what we call merchant financing was the business. So I was in the role of the COO and the head of product development for merchant financing. Now, merchant financing is a fintech. It is, Amex has, 50 million active merchants, right, that take the American Express card in the U.S., right? And we know so much about them because we know how many customers they have, we know how much they spend, we know if their business is going up or down because you're data mining all this information from all their charge activity, right? So this business was really born right after the last big recession we had when banks were not lending to small businesses, and we said, you know what, we know so much about these businesses that we could do it. Okay? And the whole business was, you're going to hear the word fintech a lot if you haven't already. It's really changing the way banking is done today, right? It's not you go and apply for a loan and 2 months later you finally get it. No, you have to figure out how can in a 5-minute journey online we're going to make a decision on whether we're going to give you this money or not on an unsecured loan and give it to you, right? And so it's partly risk decisioning, it's fraud, it's all automation, but you also have to do about a dozen regulatory checks. Along the way, you got to do AML, KY, know your customer, anti-money laundering, all the Patriot Act, sanction screening, and pass them and figure out what you do when you can't automatically pass them. And you got to satisfy what the intention of the product is. So you have, Alyssa mentioned, there's always this tension with regulators. There's the role I'm talking about, is that I want to talk to is the role of the product manager. Okay, and the product owner, which does the development of these products and the platforms by which you enroll people, by which they go and service. Okay, so this is a role, and if you go to LinkedIn and look up product owner or look up product development or product management, you're going to see a million jobs come up, right? These are phenomenal jobs, and I think IEs are very well suited for these roles because And there's something in some companies like Amex, we would distinguish the product manager from the product owner who is doing development. So product development and product management were two. A lot of companies they're just one, and it's just a continuum. Product management tends to be a little bit more marketing focused, understanding what the customer needs are, seeing what competitors are doing in market, testing different concepts, developing your product roadmap. Okay, what are all the features, what are all the servicing, enrollment, product features that I have to build and prioritize them over the next 3-4 years, because products evolve and you got to keep making them better and better, right? You continue down that road, and then ultimately you have to start building stuff, and that's what we call product development, right? And there's specific methodology in industry. Right now almost everybody follows what's called an agile methodology to do product development. Okay, so what product development is, and why IEs are so good at this, is I need to, let's say my enrollment journey, the one I just mentioned that in 10 minutes I have to make a decision on whether I'm going to give you $2 million or not, right? So you got to go, it starts with, I got to log in. How do I log in? What are the options? What is the information that I have to, get? It's like, what does that application look like? What are the minimum number of fields I need? Right, so you're developing that user journey, and at every point of that user journey, you're figuring out how does this step work. okay? And what's the data I need to pull in? What's the transformation I need to, what happens at this step? What happens when things go wrong at this step? So, you have to build some elaborate, process maps with a lot of swim lanes that, for what's going on. You're managing also everybody's requirements, because compliance and risk and product have completely different visions of what you're trying to do, and you're trying to figure out how can we design a process that satisfies everybody, right? So ultimately, you're negotiating, you're doing process maps, you're doing a lot of sharing and iterating until you finally have a process that works and then you've got to build it, right? And then that's where, again, the product owner gets into writing what we call user stories, right? They're really specs that IT has to now code to whatever specs. So very detailed, specs that you're writing user stories. And then you're working with IT in these two-week things that we call sprints. And every 2 weeks there's a next set of user stories that are going to be taken up and coded and tested immediately. And then the IEs, the product owners that can be, and I always use the higher IEs for it, ultimately have to test it, right? And do, beyond the testing that you did at every point, do that whole, user acceptance testing, and then get into fixing everything that isn't working. And then you gotta train, then you gotta figure out what's not working well, and you start the cycle over, right? So this is a job where I would hire always engineers. Some folks tended to hire business analysts. I was just always biased and wanted either engineers or guys who used to be, or computer science majors, right? Technical. I love the IEs, and every time I saw an IE, I tried to, see if they had the aptitude for the role, and I because it is all being very meticulous, thinking of the process and trying to optimize and provide the best, the best possible user experience, right? So these are two roles, the analytics role for those of you that like stats and want to go a little bit deeper into it, and you don't have to go that much deeper, right? There's a couple more regression classes, maybe, an AI course, the like, and I think you can qualify for an entry level role, or this role of product development. Phenomenal job.
Thank you.
And I promise you that'll be the longest answer I will give tonight.
You can keep Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah.
Alita, what are roles within your industry that are suited for IEs that are not traditionally an IE role?
I want to talk also about the time that I was at American Express, because as I explained also how my very analytical role that I had when I used to report to Eddie evolved into an operational risk. So operational risk sounds like operations. But I was responsible first for the business continuation planning of the company for the credit card in the US. So that was a little simpler than the role that I had afterwards, which was global. So within the US, you have it's one card, it's one language, it's one regulation. So, but different service centers servicing that credit card. So you call 24 hours, anytime American Express, and somebody's gonna pick up the phone. What happens when the service center here in Fort Lauderdale, or well, now in Sunrise, or in Phoenix, or in other locations, has to close because of natural disasters or because man-made disasters, the electricity went off. So what happens when how do we service our customers? So we had to build the business continuation plan, which is continuity of operations, and try to minimize the impact to the customers. So our card members didn't have to know that we were under pressure because of something was happening in our area. So how do we build those processes? So start from, first you need to prioritize, looking at all the different areas and say, do a risk analysis, a risk assessment, and then understand what is top within all the operations of the credit card. So I mentioned phone because usually that's where people are expecting within 20 seconds that we're going to pick up the phone. But you also have payments. You want your payments to be processed, right? Because if you don't pay, or if the system does not recognize that you have paid, then you cannot continue making purchases, and so on and so forth. So We had to look first at all the different processes, the different areas within American Express, the credit card, and understand what was the priority of each one of them. And then this is where the process flows come handy also. We need to understand each process because we needed to bring many other groups, not just the operations, but how do you route calls, or how do you route the mail to other locations? A few years ago, remember, you used to send checks. Or even now, when you go online, you know, if something happens, where is your payment going to go? So understand all the different groups that needed to participate, and how do you engage them? How do you make sure that everybody is also ready, and then test them? So we had testings twice a year, so every group needed to have their processes in place that had been tested. So we simulated events. So we brought the groups and say, today this has happened, a hurricane, the easiest, you know, in South Florida. Tell me what you're going to do. Or we even simulated sometimes, you know, like your whole team is out because they are sick. What do you do? So how can they be prepared? How do they have strong processes in place to be able to continue the operations with, as I say, minimal impact to card members? And once we also were responsible, my team was responsible for global operations, became a little bit more complicated because, as I say, different languages and different regulations. And in some countries, not, for example, in Europe, we didn't have in every country a service center, but they were centralized. So you had to have different languages also to service the different countries. So how do you train the people? So IT training, the process, the actual operations, the concern for American Express is always first the employees. So you're not going to bring employees also to an area. You're not gonna force them to go to an area that is at risk. So which other country or which other area would you go to get people to come and to service? Which are the regulations in some countries that, for example, in Europe, do not allow you to work more than 8 hours, you know, like extra time, like here in the US. So that was very interesting. At first, it didn't sound like that, because you would think that, oh, you write a process. Now you have to understand first which is the priority, and then work with everyone that needs to work in order to implement those plans.
Great. Karen?
Yeah, sitting here thinking of all the different roles in aerospace that I've run into, the IEs. I mean, besides in quality, of course, my main area, but you also had almost all your shop operations people came out of the IE background. Most of your material management people came out of the IE background, or it's good for, including buyers. Just negotiation skills and being able to understand different areas. So there's not we had simulation engineers. Yeah, Dave was down there. Okay, and so there are so many different areas that I guess my thought is, just don't box yourself in. If you're interested in an area, take a couple extra courses in that area and sell yourself, because you can do any of those positions. The one that's a little bit different that you might think of on out in the future, I mentioned that I did aerospace auditing, and that's something that people don't always look at. But to be after you've had a couple years experience, that's an area, if you like travel and like going to different places and want the best part-time job in the world, because you can pick and choose where you go. And I did a one-day audit in Australia. Of course, I took my husband and we stayed for 2 weeks. But as a contract, as a contract auditor, that was something I could do. But where there are needs for those type of nicely paid auditors, or if you get some experience either in aerospace or in medical devices, food safety, some of the specialty areas more so than a regular ISO 9000. And when you get to those higher level quality management system standards, they tend to have a lot more teeth in them than the basic ISO 9000. So they're to me more interesting to audit and to get into these business. But that's something that's, you need a couple of years under your belt before you go that direction. But absolutely best part-time job in the world. Pick and choose which jobs you take, which you don't. I intersperse. I could always pick up one of those jobs, in between consulting and teaching for the American Society of Quality and doing these other things that I was doing. So it was a pretty neat way to see a lot of different companies.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't know
Yeah.
what the question is.
It's okay, don't worry about it. So we're asking, what are the roles within your industry that are not tailor-made for IEs, but that
Yeah.
you feel IEs could do a good job?
I think it's interesting, and maybe my hospital's a little bit different, but they value IEs a lot. So our COO, our department, the project management office, again, starts with the industrial engineers, and since it is the marriage of operations and finance, it's a very powerful thing. I ask my guys, please, when you get into the department, I want you to know more about this department than the owners of this department, and so you have to do very quickly understand it. And so because of that, they've taken people from our department and just put them throughout the hospital, because very quickly you're able to learn. And so I'll say that our COO right now is someone that started my department, and he's now the COO of the hospital. And for example, our vice president of construction and engineering is someone that also started in my area and moved in there. So, aside from that, you'll see people in business analyst roles and things of that nature. So, generally speaking, I think you're seeing it more now, a lot more industrial engineers in healthcare than before. But I'll tell you, when I started healthcare, I was a little bit nervous because it was funny. I was just, well, what are we gonna do when I'm done with the improvements here? Like, I don't wanna be laid off. And then it's like, you get in here and they're like, oh my God, I'll be here forever. So there's definitely a need. And just going back to the initial, one of the first questions that you asked about, like the best and most challenging part, I think one of the most challenging parts of a hospital and of a healthcare system is the amount of people that work there. So in difference to manufacturing, where you can have policies, procedures, and machines that are set at certain levels, in healthcare, we have all these individuals that, like I said, are very, very intelligent, and you have to standardize the way that they practice, So doing all of that, doing insurances, if any of you guys have dealt with insurances, that's a mess. There's just so many, it's so convoluted that really there's enough jobs for industrial engineers that I don't think even have been realized in healthcare yet.
Great. And Karen, what were some of the more difficult transitions that you had to make in your career?
Well, I made a lot of transitions. Okay, I made major transitions every 5 to 7 years. Going from working for Aerospace, changing different companies, going into academics, going into work for myself, and then going back into academics. And I think it was the challenge was each time the reason I was able to set myself up to do this is because my very first job out of school, I got laid off. And I took it very personally. You can't help but take it personally. I mean, they let engineers with 20 years go before they let me go, but this valve manager, but the oil and gas industry tanked. Okay, so it was kind of like I was devastated. I didn't think good people got laid off. So, but what my mindset after that was never to be in a position where I wasn't preparing myself for a next role or a next industry or whatever. When I was in academics the first time, I actually stayed long enough to get tenure and gave up tenure because I wasn't having fun, but I used my sabbatical year to brush up on, get my auditing credentials, so that I could have some bread and butter type, because I knew I could always get auditing jobs while I built up my clientele, my consulting clientele, and then, those type of things. So it was that first one was a rude awakening, but after that, I was always prepared to make that move, so that's just kind of some words of advice. And don't take it too personally if you're involved in one of these big layoffs, because they do happen. But be prepared.
How about you, Eddie?
A few transitions that were challenging. I think moving from being an engineer to being a people leader, talk about something you didn't learn in school. That's right up there. Because your job now is completely different, and it takes a while for you to realize your job is completely different. And you're not being paid to be an IE anymore. You're being paid to lead people, right? And so I think that was a tough transition. Me really understanding that, wait a minute, my role is very different now, right? And especially because I really enjoyed the engineering aspects of it, right? But I found ultimately every leader has to, to be successful, you have to be who you are. You have to be natural, right? And so I never quite gave up that passion for wanting to know the details, and right? It just meant I worked a lot longer. But I also found that that's something my folks typically appreciated over time, because they thank you. Because they feel, okay, at least I care about what they're doing, what they do, right? But understanding that really, but there's new tasks that you have to do now. You're really trying to set the vision for your team and set the priorities and the like, which is different. All right, so I think that was a challenging transition. The transition from Miami to New York. Right. That was first of all, I didn't want to go. Okay, I didn't want to go. It was one of the promotions that you had to take, kind of, if you wanted to continue to have a career, at American Express. So, I was fighting. I hated it. I was like, man, I gotta go. And so my wife and I said, oh, okay, fine, we'll go, let's go 2 years and then we'll go right back. Well, I just got back about a month ago. That was 16 years ago. And it was the best move ever, for me personally, and especially for my family. It was a great move, right? It was tough, first of all, initially, because I didn't want to go, right? And then finally, making the decision that, let's do it. And it really taught me that, because we all hold on to what we have and what we know, and that's what we get attached to. And I remember I was really debating this question. Well, am I going to pick up my family and move and separate my wife from her 3 sisters and her parents and me and everything else, My friends were amazed that I took a Cuban girl out of Miami. How'd you do that, dude? And I actually, I read this book. I was just like, again, fate. I went to a meeting in our offices in Phoenix, and I was looking for something to read on the plane on the way back. And right there, sitting next to the cashier, I bought like a car magazine, and it was this book by Paulo Coelho. What's the name of the book? The Alchemist. Thank you. That's a long time ago. 6 years ago. And I got it only because the book was there and it was skinny. I go, okay. I can read it before I fall asleep. Right? And this book, it was all about this kid and having to let go of the little he had, for the next thing, but the next thing turned out to be a lot better than a little. And it was just one move after the other, and it always, it was always better, and it was always about him, learning to let go of what he had, to pursue something better, right? And I go, shoot, if this isn't fate, then I read this book on this plane right at the moment I don't know what it is, right? So they said, okay, let's do it. And sure enough, you know, you gotta, you gotta be open to different adventures, you know, and different opportunities.
Great. So I'm gonna ask your permission to get the two together because I know everybody's excited to ask questions and for the pastelitos. I don't know what they're more excited for. So let's start with Alitza. Any recommendations on how to have a successful career? And if so, if you would had to start all over again, any changes?
I think like Eddie said, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. I think you cannot be somebody else. Be yourself and show passion. I think that's very important. To show passion for what you're doing. Show that you really like and you love what you're doing and show it. And if you're not really passionate for what you're doing, well, look for something else because you know it shows in the work. It shows in your in the quality of the work you're doing. You know, so like autograph your work, you know, with excellence because that's what's going to move you through life, and you will be satisfied at the end of the day from a personal perspective also.
Great. Ashley?
So, you know, I think that something that's very important for your career, and I've seen it, is just, and I'll say, you know, two different versions of something similar, and it's maybe just who you surround yourself with. And I start with your boss. If you have a good boss, you know, that really can make a difference. I've had some bosses that are just, you know, fantastic, and they market you, they talk to you, they mentor you, you know, they push you, they challenge you, they're there, and you know, I've had, you know, some bosses that push you to present at a conference. You know, I want you to get a new certification this year, and things that I wouldn't do myself. And that's been very good. And so in one sense, I'm saying, you know, it's very important what kind of boss you have, you know, someone that really makes you become a better person. And then the other thing is also, you know, and likewise, when you are a boss, get a good team, you know. And so I do have a fantastic team, and I tell them that, and what they say is, you know, hire people that are smarter than you and really help them to move up, because then at the end of the day, you'll end up working with these people one day, you know. And so you want to instill in them excellence, passion, you know, like what you do, spend time with them, because they're the future leaders. And if you're good as a boss, then they will be future leaders. You'll be working them in the future. And so, you know, I think part of a successful career is just who you surround yourself with. You know, it might come with a company. If you're in a toxic company, maybe it's difficult to find that. But if you have a company that really values employees, and even if you don't, you know, try to be a good leader and try to get a good leader. I think that makes a world of difference in your career.
I don't know if you caught it, but a few other people that you work with, when you said get a good boss, they were like,
Yeah.
Karen?
I guess that, start with a little story. I did a presentation once. I did a big justification for a system that was that GE had they're doing a contract for Hill Air Force Base. I couldn't get anybody to give me any data to do this big analysis, so I had to do it anyway. And I did it, and I documented all my assumptions, got up, gave the presentation. They totally creamed me. And the program manager came up after the presentation, and she goes, "Karen, why aren't you in tears? They killed you." And I'm kind of like, no, they finally gave me some feedback. Now I can do it right. You know, so I guess the kind of the message there is, you know, do your best, put it out there, always document your assumptions and where you get your data from. But once you've done your best, you know, take the feedback that people give you. Don't take it personally. Take it and use it and make things better with it. And that was a lesson I had to learn somewhere along the line. So that's my advice to you.
Great. Eddie?
Adding to everything I heard, which I agree with, I would say maybe the one thing is be an entrepreneur. Okay, don't, we all get assigned tasks, right? And we need to do those tasks or we get fired. Okay, so do the job you're being paid to do it well, but go beyond the job you're getting paid to do. Okay, think, make yourself an owner of that business. Think, in terms of what does this hospital, this factory, whatever you're working in, what does it have to do to make, more profits, to grow, even more importantly, and so try to look beyond your role. There's a lot of flexibility in roles, they're defined, you read a job description, organizations, there's a lot of latitude in what people do and choose to do, right? And you can choose to do things that that are not in your job description. Right? So entrepreneurship gets rewarded. Okay, coming up with the great ideas that are maybe out of left field that has nothing to do with their job, gets rewarded. Okay, and it's fun. So I would say just, think of yourself as the owner of whatever company you're working at, big or small, and try to go well beyond, what your job is all about.
Great. So now I'm gonna open for your questions.
So, in regards to continuous learning, some of the things that you guys touched upon were, for example, product management, and I think some of those roles are really, they have a lot of variety, right, in what they need to do. They carry a lot of weight. A lot of product management roles that I've applied to require a lot of heavy programming knowledge. So what are your experiences in continuous learning? Did you have to go outside, back to school to learn something on the job, or did you learn it in your industry?
If you guys want to direct to someone, let us know. Otherwise,
I'll presume, okay. In my role as a leader, okay, a lot of times you get by without initially, having maybe all the specific qualifications, but then when you're on the road, you then you learn it, right? But, so that's that, okay? Product management, okay, there's a specific methodology, right? Agile, that's what everybody uses. And those are things just like, if you're applying for some jobs, Six Sigma, is the basic tool, or Lean, and you can get certification in it. So project management, there's product, project management certification that you can do, right? So I would say in that particular one, in this area of product management, yeah, I try to get very knowledgeable in the agile process, okay? And there's guys who are just consultants that do nothing but go around organizations, to teach, or help, companies with their transformation to agile. But that is, that, to be very specific, is one specific, piece of, and just keep at it. Look at other organizations. Maybe one requires, based on the way they're organized, one kind of skill set, but they're not all that way. In my case, again, I presume that I'm going to teach the methodology to whomever. I'm just looking for somebody who's sharp. I'd ask some very interesting case questions to see how sharp they are, and then would anybody would just I just want somebody with a technical background, because I think then everything else they'll learn.
So for you, for example, you went into finance as an IE. Did you learn most of those skills on the job, or did you go outside of your job? Actually go to school or take a course online or anything?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
no, great question. In my case, it was all on the job. Yeah, it was all on the job. But again, there's no, depending on what you're seeking and what your skill set is going into the role. Obviously, do what you have to do. From a classroom or training perspective. Sure. Yeah, good question. I will say the kind of continuous education, though, I'm sorry, is more than kind of job applied. Because we're doing continuous research on the market. Specifically in the fintech area, there's many services and people out there all the time coming up, a better way to do fraud identification, a better way to analyze bank statements and bring, so you're continuously scouring the market, to look at, who's doing what and what are the tools and what are the, what are the things that you can bring into your process, which is, again, is a form of innovation, right? And something that's also rewarding, people who are out there finding all these, these really good services, players out there to make your own, core service better.
Thank you. If, just before you go, if anybody don't listen to the question, let me know and I'll repeat because I know it's easier for you to hear from me. So go ahead and then I'll come to you.
So, at least when I went to school long ago, we learned a lot of different tools in industrial engineering, Excel and Six Sigma and do time studies, process flow, etc. But I think technology has drastically changed and can take what industrial engineers do to another level. What are some of those new tools or more technology tools that you're doing this day? For example, applying BPM, business process management, RPA, when you put a robot to do anything that a human being does if they don't have to think, or even have used Tableau to make a huge difference because you don't need to know so much SQL. You can have these new tools that help you create these awesome dashboards and change someone's job. So can you talk about some of these new tools that we didn't learn in school but are making huge difference this day that you have used? And I think 81 ago.
That audience? I was trying to contain myself.
You guys don't use Ample, right? That's never happened.
I want to kind of talk to that.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of those new tools are out there, but most businesses are, except for the major players maybe, but most of the businesses out there that really need help still need those fundamentals that we've learned. So, and I taught robotics for a while, and students wanted to apply robots to everything. Robots did not belong to everything. And when you move towards lean, there's even less need for robots in a lot of those cases. So, I think a lot of times, I did a lot of justification work. These managers would want the latest gizmos and gadgets, and they weren't always appropriate. So you really have to kind of step back and maybe not be quite so quick to jump on everything new. Yeah, it's nice to be at the leading edge on those things, but most businesses, my opinion, are not ready for so much of that.
But let me just jump in. I went to a conference, I think 2 years ago, and I was surprised because this consulting company, I guess, or company came over and they said, and it was interesting because it was kind of using real-time data to give you an idea of, hey, you're gonna need to call a nurse, you're gonna need to open beds, and it was interesting because it did a lot of the things that we generally do to say, hey, let's look at historical data, but it was real-time and stuff. We didn't go into that, but you're right, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. And we also just went to another conference where this person from IBM started saying AI is the future and IEs are the future, and one of the things that I'll tell you is that a lot of the things that we do sound like common sense and they seem like common sense, and you're like, okay, I get it, but the more you're in the industry, the more you realize that it's not that common, common sense, that understanding of a process and of the data set and knowing, and being able to pick up on something that quickly, it's really not that common. So, your question is something that I'm asking myself as well, because I think we're coming into a new age where new things are coming up, and so what are those things that we need to be learning to be on the cutting edge of these things? Because if this company that can predict everything that I used to say, oh, hey, open a bed, bring a nurse and all of that, then what's the value? But as you've heard, that's something that now you can do with your eyes closed almost, right? You're right, Tableau, great, now this is done. Now let me go do the hard part, the change management. Nothing's gonna take that part of doing the change management, the actual fixing of the process, the talking to the people, explaining that data or seeing that, even creating the Tableau is difficult, because I think there's so much of an art to creating something that's actionable. I've seen reports, and I can never find a report that I like because none of them ever show me something that I can do that's actionable. So I always end up looking, hey, get me the back end of the database because I need to put this in a way that will create people, make someone do something. So I hear you, and I think it's something that we really need to keep our eyes out for, and make sure that we're learning and keeping up to date with some of these things, because it's definitely coming. And you're right, there's a lot of things that are changing. And I also agree with you. The big companies are there, the smaller ones not yet.
Most
But
of
you
the
know what?
smaller ones.
Yeah, but there's a long time ahead. Hopefully for all of us here,
Yeah, that's
that we have to stay on top of some of these things.
The world changes, right? And hence our profession needs to change with the world. Right? The world is now a digital world, right? So, we shouldn't be learning about third-blades and IN 301 or whatever the class is, or 124, whatever. Like, who cares, right? That's like that. This is, we're not a manufacturing society anymore, right? So, we really, it's curriculums, and I was having, Dr. Amachan and I were having a conversation about this about a week ago. It's our profession, I think, and what we teach has to be geared towards where are the jobs. Ultimately, that's what universities need to do, is prepare students for the job. So I believe the core IE curriculum is still sound. It just needs to be adapted to how's the world changing, right? So the IN, is it still 547, the human factors and the like? Well, it's a digital world. It's like I would say, well, how does an IN 547 fit in a digital world? This human factors engineering. Now it has to focus more on UI UX, because that's where the jobs are. Analytics. I do feel there's an option that should be offered. That goes just a little deeper, so that our students could be more marketable as analysts, as data analysts that can go get jobs in marketing analytics or risk management, which would involve, a little bit more training in traditional regression, still the more common tool. But AI is what every single job that you look out for is looking for that. And it's not either or, really. It's some of the neural network AI stuff. It works in conjunction with basic regular data mining as well. So it's giving those fundamentals. Those fundamentals. I do feel the product management is an area that there's a lot of jobs in this digital world. That we can formalize and really help students be able to sell themselves as product management with of course on Agile. What else that we need to teach them, right? So it's just transforming, tweaking our what we offer to make you more marketable. And in many cases, you just have to supplement it with on your own, taking those electives that are offered in the management science school or in a computer science program and the like, to customize your own training for the jobs that interest you.
And I was going to add, in our department, the tools are also, that most of the project managers, I'm in the program management, not in the project management, they are in-house, they have been built in-house. So all the basics are necessary in order to build the tools and to use them. So it goes back to the basics, and like Eddie was saying, just get that additional computer science component that will help you, because every industry is different, and every industry has different needs. There is a team in my department that is building a project management tool. We have, Primavera, we have Microsoft Project, but something that adapts more to how we do the work. So, but the basics, it's what's behind it.
If you guys allow me to compliment just what I see, and I agree with all of you, is at the end of the day, whatever tools you guys are using, there is the human component. If you cannot communicate whatever big data you're using to the floor and to the CEO, you're not getting anywhere as far as change projects and change management goes. If you cannot use that information to communicate effectively on both ends of the spectrum, whatever big tool is not gonna be useful. So,
Just a follow-up on the curriculum and changes in the curriculum, and for those of you that haven't done your senior design projects yet, really try to get in a truly interdisciplinary senior design project. I'm an ABET evaluator, and every school I go into says, oh, we do interdisciplinary teams, and almost all of them have all IEs on the team. Oh, well, they have to consult over here. Because you really can learn from those other people and see what they're doing. So if you can get a real interdisciplinary project, that you can learn from those other people and learn a bit about those other disciplines as well and how to work with them, I think that's a really good way to go.
I got heard and
So this is for Ethnic and Karen. I see that you both have your PE. Do you feel that's helped you further advance your career? Is it more just for yourself? How has it helped?
I got mine when I was at GE, and it really made a subtle difference because I was at IE on the manufacturing side, and I was all in these advanced manufacturing projects that I was justifying and working with the engineers on. They were all, you know, the MEs and that, you know, unfortunately, you still think they're better than the IEs. It was a very subtle thing. I put that PE after my name. None of them had their PEs. And it was kind of like, oh, you have your PE? You know, it's all of a sudden kind of like, you know, so you shouldn't have to do that.
Right.
But you know, I did it for just, of course, because I always keep studying and go put initials after my name, but it really did make a subtle difference in the way other people perceived me as an engineer. You know, definitely take the FE exam before you leave school.
Yeah, and I just, and no, it really hasn't made much of a difference for me, but I had, you know, I've interviewed a lot of people in my life, and it's been very difficult to tell. I mean, I personally, I don't know, maybe you guys have a good formula of like knowing who's good and who isn't, but I saw a lot of things that looked very impressive, but then when they got into the door, not really that great. And so like I said, I had a really good boss at the time, and I made it a point to get something new every year. And so that year I decided to do the PE, and again, it's not that it helps me much, but at least I know it's a differentiator for me. I mean, not a lot of people have passed that exam, and so you know that someone that has, you know, understands statistics, understands a lot of the IE tools, but generally speaking, no.
Yes, I didn't do much, but it's
Yeah.
it is
I'm gonna be very honest.
differentiator, and it does, people do notice when you have it.
My good friend George Dios, who was supposed to be here today, but didn't show. He has a PE, and I think it was extremely important in his business as a consultant and getting a lot of the work, especially the government work that he gets.
Yeah, any of those certifications you can get. I got my, you know, I got my certified in production inventory management just because they were offering the CPIM, just because they were offering it after work, and all the other people in the materials management area were taking it. Later on, when I was having to justify a scheduling system for a multi-site shop integration project, and was able to go down there, and the manager over the area, you know, sits like this and says, you don't know what you're talking about. All my production schedulers are, you know, going for their, you know, taking these classes and doing all this. They're highly trained. And I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, I got my CPM last year. You know, and it's just, you know, I mean, you pull them out when you need them. You know, but you know, they come in handy sometimes. And I always enjoyed learning, so, you know, I go take those classes. You know.
Great. In October or November, we had the panel discussion that was PMP, PE, and Lean Six Sigma. It's on YouTube.
Oh.
And George was one of the speakers. So we might want to go and take a look at that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very cool event. Mm-hmm. Some of the people here were here.
Do you think your first job was like a big driver in setting your career path? Because I know when like applying when you're interviewing is try to stay true to like maybe what you like, what you're interested in. But then it's scary because when I feel like after your first job you have experience in that industry maybe, and then you kind of possibly tend to like apply for similar jobs and so on. I know like some people go to like completely different industries, but I wanted to know your opinions on that.
Everybody,
Yeah, like what?
who want to start?
Listen, goals when you graduate is one, get a job. period. Right? If you're lucky enough to have an option, right? I would say definitely go for, and I say they pay differently, right? I would not focus on what they're gonna pay you as opposed to what's the experience, because you're absolutely right. I think that first job could set your trajectory, right, thereafter.
And
Let me ask
I'll-
a question in the same line of, what would you recommend for someone that just graduated from school or someone that has a few years to go into a big company or rather a smaller company? Because I think that both have pros and cons, but what is your view on that?
let me
Yeah,
run
yeah,
off.
that's
important. Importance of the first
So
job
I
is
started,
more.
you know, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. One of the things that I'll say is, you know, I started in manufacturing and it was a big company, and one of the things that I really love is taking an industry and applying it to another, you know, and I haven't been in too many industries, but manufacturing and healthcare, it's so interesting to look at something that manufacturing has it down. I mean, you go in there and you wanna shave off seconds off of things, you know, and that's a win. And then you get into healthcare and you're shaving off hours, and you can't do the same thing, but you can apply a lot of the similar concepts. And so that to me was very helpful, and I love that. And I love learning about different industries and applying it because there's so much synergies there. So I would say, personally for me, it was very helpful to go into a company that was very structured and you would learn the way that things would be able to be run, and then go into a place where it's just not as structured and being able to say, look, this is how it's supposed to work. I've seen it work. I know how it works. And do that. To your question, Carolina, I think that it is difficult after you've been there for a while. After a certain time, and you have been in a certain industry, it's very difficult to make a move. At least that's my experience. Once you get into something for a certain amount of years, your expertise is in that area, and you just naturally go into that. So I don't have any experience shifting from that industry after I did my first two jobs. But again, and maybe it was a matter of luck. It was an old professor that called me up to do healthcare. Maybe I wouldn't have been taken, otherwise. But to me, that was so valuable to be able to see how things should work and apply it in a different industry. So if you can, I would suggest, get experience in different places, and like you said, don't get hung up on where you start. Just, get a place where you can learn a lot.
Yeah, and Kathleen, and I completely agree that our skills are very transferable, right? Sometimes it's hard for you to sell yourself, if I've been in manufacturing for 10 years,
Yeah.
that I can do healthcare all of a sudden. And some industries have more specialization, like healthcare. One in particular where, no, I think the next employer is gonna, really value your healthcare experience, and that's why they're gonna pay you now a premium to come to their shop, because of that experience that you've gained. So it's tricky. I would, but again, we're not all fortunate to have like 10 job offers and go, okay, I want that one. If you do that, then yes, then you have the luxury of thinking through as to what's the industry, what's the role, what am I gonna be learning? I think that's the more important thing is, what are the skills? Most of your learning is gonna come on the job. The school gave you a good foundation, but, I think I was fortunate to have probably applied more than most, a lot of variety of jobs, but, try to go into an organization that you think you're gonna learn the most and that you think is gonna be in high demand in the future.
But whatever organization you go into, you definitely, to me, I do think the salary is important though, because if you still live like a student for about 5 years and sock that money away, you then have choices that you wouldn't have otherwise. You have some flexibility to make a job change, and I use my daughter in this example. She did 5 years corporate, she went into the Peace Corps. Now she's searching for a new job, which she's got a couple interviews lined up, and supply chain type of things, but she wants to make a shift and to a totally different industry. She did retail, now she wants to go nonprofit. She can afford to do that and take the time to do that because she still lived like a student while she had that first really good job. So don't just up your totals, well, I'm all about saving and everything anyway. Don't, really, if you think you might wanna do something different than you're doing now, definitely sock the money away to give you flexibility to do that.
Let me ask you a question you didn't ask, which is,
Oh, yeah, we still need to
is that
answer.
once you're in a role, when do you move to the next one, right? And here's where, you can move too early or you can move too slow, right? I've tended to, probably if I think back at my career, what could I have done better? I could have probably moved quicker, but I personally just get too attached to a role, and I always want to make it better and better and better, and but you have to think of, what's the right moment, and really the right moment is once you've made a mark in the role that you're in, that you've made, that you've been able, that you've been able to learn all that you want to learn, from that role, and two, then that you have something to show where you've added value and you have some feather in your cap, some accomplishment that you drove. That's probably now the right moment to boom, look for the, go towards that next role, whether it's a lateral within your own company, hopefully a promotion, or and at times, depending on how satisfied you are with the company and on any opportunities, is make a move to another organization.
Alicia?
To answer his question about start with a large company or a small company, my preference would be to start with a large company, but like you mentioned, get surrounded by people that are going to help you. So once you know who your boss is and how you're working with that boss, make sure that it's somebody that's going to support you, because large companies give you a lot of opportunities, especially starting fresh out of school. You have so many different areas where you can go. You have some tuition reimbursement also for additional, to train you on the job also. So I think if it was me, I would go, having worked in a small company and also in the corporate world, I would go for the corporate world first, or a large company that I know is going to support me, but making sure that your boss is supporting you and the people around you. If not, the opportunity in a large company is that you can look at different other areas and, look for that right job that you want. So.
And to be devil's advocate, because I work, even though it's a big hospital, it's also a standalone hospital. So we were not part of a big corporation. And so, our job is to fight the fight every day so that expenses don't go up. And you get very creative and you have to do things that are really, well, there's no job description. Okay, guys, well, go negotiate that. You're not gonna take an increase, go call that company. And so there's a lot of things like, how do you get creative? And so, well, that's also something that's nice. And to your point, I think it's great to have, if you can have both experiences, it's valuable, but small companies allow you that creativity also and that bandwidth to say, go for it. I mean, we don't have time or people to do all of these different roles. You wanna do that? Go for it. Whatever makes a difference. So it's hard to say which one to start with, but there's pros and cons of each one. I think it depends on what kind of person you are as well.
That's the key. It's what's your personality?
No, I honestly like your answer, Eddie, and when you said first get a job, because I think that's the mentality that you have to get when you are fresh out of school.
Right.
Don't get hung on the details and try to land your first job and then grow from there.
Yeah, but there really is no right answer.
That's what I say, my preference, so it's.
What are your needs, what's your personality, big companies you learn, good big companies you learn, to become a good leader, there's stability, you can have a good career, you can eventually, make a good living. Small companies, startups, it's adrenaline, right? It's fun. It's like there's excitement. If the startup works, there's a big paycheck. If it doesn't, well, you just made no money for 2 years. It's really what's your appetite for risk? You know, what's your need?
Yeah.
You know, if you're raising a family and boom, and you need a job, a steady job, okay, that, you know, that's different also.
So, sorry guys, we are a little bit over time, so if you need to ask a question, let me know, otherwise, let's get this wrapped up.
So, last one?
Last one or last two?
Okay.
I was just gonna add for the question about having no experience, that a lot of companies are actually promoting into hiring people that are just finishing school into different programs, rotational programs, summer internships, among others. And what I've seen that they are looking is that in the absence of experience, they are focusing on your soft skills. Do you have the ability to influence others? Do you have leadership skills in the making? Do you have creativity to come up with solutions using what you already know in school? So what I will do if any of you is in that situation is pretty much focus on the soft skills that I could sell, because at the end when you interview with anyone, you're selling yourself, you're selling the capabilities, the things that you could do, the things that you've learned, and the willingness to put all into place into making your job or their job a better place.
So, last question.
Oh, my question? Oh, okay, so when it comes to entrepreneurial endeavors, if someone has a business on the side, does that deter you from maybe hiring that person because you might think they might deviate their time into two things? And also, if they have had an entrepreneurial endeavor where they go on and go for a year or two and it doesn't necessarily work, and they come back to the workforce, you know, what are your views of those two different scenarios when hiring someone?
None for me. I mean, great, you know, good that you tried something and it didn't work, come back, why not, you know?
And what if that
I guess it just depends on the type of person that you're asking, but it's all about who you are, what you've tried. I think there's nothing, you know, it's something to be proud of, if anything, you know?
And what if it's right now on with a business?
During?
Yeah.
I think that it's, I don't like to make assumptions of people or judge them before, you know, so if you present yourself, if you have the credentials, who am I to say that you will or will not put the time in there, you know, so. But again, I make a lot of bad hires. Not right now.
I would love the person who failed on his own thing. I would have a hard time hiring somebody who's just using me to pay the bills, but he's really, you know, trying to do his own gig. Because, you know, any job you wanna be able to give 110% and really be, you know, dedicated, and, you know, jobs nowadays aren't, you know, any kind of job is not a 40-hour job. I don't know of any job, you know, that's a 40-hour job, right? So, you know, so that, I think that would be tough for me to really want to hire somebody who's got their business that they're passionate about and just need a paycheck to keep it going.
And I'm very familiar with two people that did the side business things and ended up getting fired from their corporate jobs because they ended up spending too much time on the other and making the phone calls from work and things like that and got over there. So.
And I would hire somebody, like you said, who would try and,
Yeah,
you know,
I would
was a
hire
risk
somebody to
taker.
try.
That shows, you know, right there you're showing, you know, one of your skills. That's, you're a risk taker. You're willing to do what you want or what you think, you know, it's going to work. It didn't work. You learn. So you already have a learning, plus, you know, you demonstrated that you're a risk taker and that you're going to come with creativity also into the job.
The workforce is also changing. Like, I think for the entrepreneur who has this idea, who wants to bring it to market, there is this gig economy where, you know, where folks have a colleague who left American Express and she's got like 3 or 4 things going, but they're all very specific. They're gigs. I do this for this person, I do that, and by the way, I make more money than I ever did on Amazon, you know, but it's accepted and that's what you're doing. You're contracting for different things, right? I'm now in that economy, right? I retired from Amex, you know, at the end of the year to start my own business, but I also, you know, need to pay the bills, and, you know, this is a long-term project, I know it, so, you know, so I'm consciously, and, you know, the people I'm working with are consciously knowing that I'm helping you with this, I'm helping you with that, and it's okay, then there's no assumption that I'm there full-time, as a traditional job.
Thank you. So now I'm gonna open, if you guys wanna do final statements, any last comments, and then I'll give the word to Maria Carolina. So if you wanna start, Alisa, any final comments? Go for it. You're right here.
No peeking.
No, thanks for coming. This is really very enriching for me. I thank Eddie who thought of me and he called me. To be honest with you, it's the first time I'm participating in a panel. I've been in the business, in the industry, in different industries for a long time. And I think we can all learn also from your questions and from all that curiosity that you bring, that you're asking. And I was telling Eddie when I talked to a couple of you before we started the panel, it's like how much we have to learn also from all of you. So thank you for your questions and for attending.
Thanks for having me, thanks for the engagement. I'm happy to continue the conversation over coffee.
Can we say welcome back to Miami?
Thank you. Gracias.
Yeah, I think same as Alicia. I mean, I'm very happy to be here, and I really loved even setting up the questions before. It was like, wow, that's really interesting. I love sitting here with different industries and learning about everyone's experiences. I think all of you guys have so much to look forward to in the future. I think IEs, and obviously bias, is such a great career. We have so many different places to go and stuff, and so doing this, staying in a network is important, and learning from each other. And so thank you to the IISE group for putting this together. This is really wonderful.
Thank you.
Just my thanks as well, and I wish all of you the best of luck as you move forward in finishing your education. Actually, you never finish your education. Moving on to your careers as well. If you aren't working on your master's now and you need a master's, think about us as well.
So, thank you all panelists. It was a great moment, very learning experience for me as well. Thank you all guys for coming. I think this is the biggest outing we had since we restarted the chapter. So thank you very much for coming, staying all the way. We know it's Thursday night, it's late, so thank you very much.
I have an important question. At what time does a rack close today?
I think 10 p.m.
At 10?
And I'll give the word to Maria Carolina. These guys, pastelitos, there's a bunch of food. Please eat.
Also, hi everyone, my name is Maisel. I'm the student president for the chapter of IISE here, and we're probably going to have a networking event with the senior chapter. Of course, any alumni, professional members, whatever it may be.
I was gonna say that.
You're welcome to come. I would love to see you all there. Networking is a really important thing to students nowadays. I know that's pretty much one of the biggest reasons a lot of students like to join these kinds of organizations. So you'll probably get emails, you'll see on their social media. If you want to come talk to me, you can, but just wanted to put the word out there because I'd love to see all of you there.
Okay, what's there to say that they haven't said already? Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to our panelists, and we have certificates for our panelists here for participating and joining us tonight and sharing your vast knowledge and experience with our attendees. This is what Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers is all about. So thank you for making it happen.
Thank you.
Karen, here we go.
We're gonna take a small picture.
Before you go, I have a couple of announcements. So on February, we're gonna host a networking event with the student chapter. And then in March, the IISC fiscal year is from April 1st to March 31st. So with that said, what we are doing in March is celebrating that now we have a professional chapter in South Florida. So I want to have you all celebrating with us this big milestone. And then on April, we're gonna have 2 events. One event is gonna be, and I'm happy that I see many women like myself over here, because the event that we're gonna have in April is Women in Engineering, and the challenges that we face as women in engineering. So I know there are also some guys here, but I also invite you to come so that now that to make you aware of what these challenges are, and then have you become our ally as we navigate this world, right? And then the other event that we are gonna have in April is, I'm pretty sure you are all aware of the corporate run that happens every April. It's a very interesting and a healthy way of networking.
Okay.
I don't know about you guys, but I think that a lot of the connections do not happen in something that is very academic like this, but in something that is more relaxed. So that's why I'm inviting you all to take out your business clothes, put some sneakers, and let's all go run together and stay healthy together.
Challenge accepted.
There you go, I like it. So if you have not followed us in Instagram and LinkedIn and all our different social media channels, I invite you to take your phone out and follow us. You can find us online in any social media as IISE Greater Miami Chapter. And that's how we publish all our events. And then last but not least, before you go, I want you to take out your phone and respond to the survey and share your thoughts with us as what did you think about this event? Did this event met your expectations? Did you think coming here and spending the time with us was worth it? Is there anything that we need to do better? I mean, who said that we couldn't use our own industrial engineering tools to improve what we do here, right? And then also let's take a picture together. So if we can have all of you come this way. So
just before you guys come, if anybody's still not a member of ISE student chapter, talk to them. Professional chapter, talk to Ivy back there. Ivy, say hi. So if anybody's not a member, let them know.
Come on, the club's a ride. Let's go.